that the year of grace allowed the British Embassy and the British Foreign Office to decide what was going to happen to Mac's future. He was a contract officer in any case, not what you might call a career diplomat, even though he had a diplomatic experience in Indonesia and in Thailand. Now, at this time, Britain was contracting. Contracting at home and contracting their representation abroad. And what they did was to close consulates, in particular, not embassies, I don't think anywhere, but consulates, east of Suez was the slogan. So that meant that they closed they were going to close the British consulate in Medan. Although there was I think about a 2-year time lag from that decision to when it actually happened. And after we left, Mac was actually replaced by another British consul from Surabaya. I don't know if he had closed that consulate and then came to Medan to close that consulate. Possibly that was so. Meanwhile, Mac was awarded by the British government an OBE, Order of the British Empire, and they negotiated a placement in Sarawak, in Kuching, in the special branch of the police, because they were dealing with growth in communism amongst the tribal indigenous people, especially the Ibans. And because of Mac had this background in dealing with similar situations, although Malaysia had just been formed, the Malaysians agreed that he could go and join as an advisor and analyst in security matters within the special branch of the police in Kuching. So after leave in Australia, we went to Kuching. By that time, Philippa was born in Australia, and she was a baby in arms when we went to Malaysia. Interestingly enough, we went to Kuala Lumpur for Mac to be briefed and so on. So I looked up some of my friends. The Australian Embassy ambassador, High Commissioner in fact, was Tom Critchley, whom I had met many years before as a student, and then later, when I was on my way via Kuala Lumpur to Indonesia to be a volunteer. And we had kept in touch via Christmas cards and things like that. So he was one of the people, and his new wife we went to see. And so another Malaysian was Sam Dimmick, Dr. Sam Dimmick, who had graduated from Adelaide University, and I'd known him through student politics in Australia. And he was a specialist paediatric doctor, and he came to the hotel where we were staying to see my children, especially the baby, and we were invited to his mother's house, I think, for dinner, and met the rest of his family, although I'd met them before too. When my parents had visited Malaya, we had dinner with them then too. So student friends were friends for life, really. Sarawak and Kuching, it was very peaceful by comparison to what we'd been through. And I really welcomed it. I realised that I had left Indonesia with a permanent state of high tension, which was relieved by coming to Australia and having another baby to distract me. But it was diminished once again by living in Kuching, because it was such a peaceful, easygoing place. And I made some good friends there too, including some well-placed Malays who were being promoted into high positions in the public service as the British, because it had been a British colony until it joined Malaysia. The British were slowly phasing out and retiring. Among the other people who we quickly got to know was a man who became, I'll have to dredge up this name. Others included two women in particular, Malay women, who formed the Sarawak Women's Association, something like that. And I was invited to. It was European women could be invited or go to it anyway, and they invited me to join their association. And they had, I think it was a monthly broadcast over Radio Sarawak, and it was in English. And I partnered with a local Malay woman to write the scripts for this monthly broadcast, which was good fun. And I got to know her, Hafsha Harun, her name was, very well. And her mother was still alive and living with her, with Hafsha, and she had been a telephonic radio person under the Brook, the Rajas Brook, who 3 generations of the Brook family had ruled Sarawak and were known as the White Rajas. She could tell, her name was Lily, she could tell some terrific stories about the conversations she overheard on her in her role as a telephonist in the Kuching post office. But when she left there, she set up an English language school, which Hafsha continued to run. So it's a small private school, primary level. I think it might have gone up to perhaps grade 8. And while I was there, they had a wooden school building built in the yard, and it was very interesting to know those people, and they were very open-minded, open house, open in every way, and it was a joy to talk to them.
Why did Sarawak become part of Malaysia and not stay as part of Indonesia?
No, it wasn't part of Indonesia.
Yeah, so why was that?
Oh, right. Well, Sarawak and British North Borneo were colonies, just like Malaya had been colonies of the British. Brunei was not a colony, but it was something like a protectorate. So if the British were going to withdraw from east of Suez, they had to get out of their colonial dependencies, and it was not absolutely clear that Sarawak and Sabah had the intellectual capital development, social capital development, to rule themselves independently. So the British persuaded them to join with Malaya in the formation of Malaysia. Malaya was very happy about it because in Sarawak there were Malays as well as other indigenous people. In British North Borneo, which became Sabah, there weren't Malays so much as other indigenous people. But what that meant for the government, the Malayan government, was they would be adding Malays to their population at the time that the Chinese population was growing in proportion to the Malays. And the Malays were very anxious about becoming a minority in their own country. Mm-hmm. So Peninsula Malaya, Singapore, Sarawak, Sabah, British North Borneo, Sabah, and originally Brunei were all going to join in. Mm-hmm. In the end, Brunei pulled out because it was ruled by a sultan. It was independent because it had oil, petroleum, and because the Brunei Sultan wasn't given what he considered to be due respect in relation to the other sultans of the states of Malaya.
Mm-hmm. And what was Dad doing there? What was his job?
His job was researching documents that had been captured from the Communist Party of Sarawak that had some Chinese membership, but also had IBAN. They had been trying to recruit membership from amongst the IBAN. The special branch had captured some of the leaders of the Communist Party, and they had captured a lot of documents. The documents, if they weren't already in English, were translated in some cases from Chinese into English. I suppose there might have been some Malay, but I'm not sure about that. And his job was to read all this documentation and piece together the organisation of the Communist Party, and where possible attach names to the different factions, and also how they were, it was very important how they were organised. In true communist development, they created cells, and there was a hierarchy of cells of just a limited number of people. And membership knew the members of their own cell, but not the names of any other cell, and that cell's representative into the next step in the hierarchy knew who that membership was, but no other membership, and they were not allowed to tell the members of their own cell who the members were of the higher cell. So it was a very clever and very interesting thing to put together. And Mac did a very good job on this. I didn't ever read what he had written, but as well as going to, copies went to Kuala Lumpur, but also copies to Singapore. And Singapore, being ruled by Chinese, of course, were very, very interested and very complimentary about the quality of Mac's analysis and reconstruction.
And wasn't there some disappearance of a man as well that he was investigating?
Oh, that was after we left. We were in Sarawak for 2 years, and during that time I made the most of it by travelling, for example, to Lundu with you, and oh no, that was another time, wasn't it? Sorry, I should write this all down chronologically. Anyway, went there, went to Lundu, went up to the highlands of Sarawak, to the eastern states of, nearly all the states I visited one way or another. So yeah, I had a real love for Sarawak, I must say. Well, when we left, we came to Australia, and we already knew that Mac had this posting to Sarawak.